Gloria, welcome to the Modern Warrior podcast. It is an absolute honor to have you here with me today. And thank you for taking the time to sit and speak with me. Myself and Gloria met in Creakin at a wellness retreat. We were both there for different reasons, but we were also there for the same reasons, perhaps. And having gotten to know Gloria whilst I was there, I felt that this would be an incredible opportunity to hear your story.
Thank you.
To also hear your opinions on masculinity as it is today in today's world, on the state of men, on the state of humanity, on the potential political agenda that's happening beneath the scenes that we aren't very aware of, and how this is manipulating and controlling the population. Not to go too deep into that, but before we get into the deeper stuff in terms of male masculinity, mental health, spirituality, I would like to hear about your story and your origins in this life and where it all sort of began for you. Go right back to the first line of the first chapter of this life.
Thank you, Gavin. I'm really honored to be here, and I'm so really happy that we came together and met just a week or so ago, right?
Yeah, about that.
So,
in this life.
In this life, exactly. We always have to say "in this life," don't we?
Yeah.
And I'm happy to tell my story because it's interesting to me how our early circumstances dictate the course of our lives. And I'm one of the people who gets to say I had the benefit of having an unhappy childhood. It was tough. And I grew up in the southern part of the United States. I was an only child of two very, very unhappy people. And from the time that I was young, I was given the sense that I had to save these two people, and that surely someone knew how to save people and make people happy and make things better. And it was my role to figure it out. I mean, I knew that from age 3 and 4. My parents were both very serious alcoholics who managed to pretty much hide it behind their day-to-day roles. And so there were lots of secrets in our lives. And I was scared, I was sad, but I felt really powerful for some reason at a very early age. So I taught myself to read when I was 4. And the safest place in my house was the bottom of a linen closet. And I learned to read the Bible, autobiographies, whatever I could about human nature and living. And my best friend was Jesus. So I would go into the bottom of this linen closet and read huge, vast tomes when I was, 4 and 5 years old. And it felt like a pretty important mission. And it felt like I had a sense of purpose. And so I learned some things, and I knew from a very early age that I was going to be in some position to help people survive, that I had a gift that was my passion, and till today, it's still my passion. My dad was gay in the South in a time where people weren't very accepting of gays, and we had to keep it undercover. And my mother was very angry at that. And he would disappear for weeks at a time. So I would emerge and call hotels and try to find him. And I would find him, and then he'd come home. And my mother and dad my mom was so angry. I didn't really know what was going on then. But I felt like I had to protect my father. So there would be battles night after night with beatings and screaming and attacks on my character, and the feeling, not the feeling, but the message that I wasn't valuable, that I would never be attractive, that I wasn't enough. So my self-worth, I think, came from my mission to figure out how to help other people and make people happy and save these two very sad beings. And I don't know that I saved them. They were quite unhappy for most of their lives. And I thought I couldn't get away. Oh my gosh, how am I going to have a life? Because they would say, we can't survive. We can't survive without you. And so when I was a teenager, I would set my alarm clock and get up at 3 o'clock in the morning and secretly apply to colleges. And I got accepted to some pretty distinguished schools. And so even though they said I couldn't leave, that was my ticket out. And I was going to study psychology, which was a relatively new kind of profession in those days. And I was very fortunate. I got scholarships and was paid to go to school in honors and whatever, or I wouldn't have been able to do it. So that was the early part of my life. But there were other things that went on in the early part of my life that I had to keep secret. And one of these situations you and I discussed when we were together last week. And we talked about shame and guilt and, the sources of shame that we protect in relationships or with the rest of the world. We don't want people to know that there were 4 football players next door who would take me and into a dirt basement and sequentially rape me. And this happened many times. And I'm thinking, how do I keep this secret? How do I stop this? I was maybe 8 or 10, and I didn't understand. And today in my work, I've heard so many stories, and you've heard so many stories like this. And so that's what happened to me. And all of those forces kind of shaped a person who was very strong, but also who felt not worthy of love. And that's my origin story.
Why do you... I know the answer to this, but some people may be quite confused as to why you called this traumatic childhood something that was beneficial to you.
Well, I think had I had a normal, peaceful, protected childhood with normal childhood events, I wouldn't be so driven, nor would I understand pain and shame and guilt and trauma as well as I do. And those of us who've been through that, and I think it's a lot of us, we have a framework for helping other people. And for me, to this day, there's nothing more important than hearing people's stories and helping them to forgive themselves and move forward. And
yeah, because you can relate. You can step into their shoes and actually identify with
yes,
the feelings and emotions that they're struggling to navigate in their life because you've been there yourself.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
At what point do you let go of trying to fix these 2 individuals who you love dearly? And
I never stopped trying to fix them. The challenge was, how was I going to have any kind of independent life where there were these 2 very sad beings who were locked in this struggle? And so I went away to school, and I met a man, and we were in school together for a couple of years and decided to get married. And that was an escape, but I worried about my parents every minute. And
What age were you?
pardon me?
What age?
This is like I got married when I was 19. How can anybody think they know the world or can make a decision like that at 19 years of age? But I felt like a very old being in a young body.
I understand.
And so I married this man, and he decided he wanted to be a doctor. And I said, well, I'll be a doctor too. And he said, no, Gloria, you can't be a doctor. And so I said, I'll be a doctor of psychology. And so he went to go on to be a very prominent surgeon. Dropped out of school and put him through school and residency and so forth. And then I went to graduate school at the same time. So we were pretty much separate. And I would think that I knew so much. I knew so much about trauma and pain and discord in individuals that maybe I could avoid this in my own marriage. But you know how it is. You know how it is. And we start out, I think, in relationship, and I see this over and over again, in love, open, trusting, and then as time goes on, we hide aspects of ourselves because we've never gotten over the original shame and guilt and so forth. So we can't bring that into something even as intimate as a marriage. We begin putting up walls and pretending to be something we're not. And my former husband was very handsome, and at the beginning of our marriage, his mother happened to come by when we were making love, and she found out, and he was horrified. And he told me, Gloria, this will never happen between us again.
Shame.
From
him.
Yeah. And I felt a part of it. So I said yes. And I went on a journey to just be more and more externally perfect and support him and be a fabulous wife and so forth. But meanwhile, he had his shame and his sense of inadequacy and whatever allowed him to have affairs with various people in the hospital because he was gone all the time at night and so forth. And I knew what was going on, and yet I stayed married to him.
Do you know why?
I think growing up in that house in that way that I did, I thought I could overcome anything.
Or that you could fix him?
Fix myself. We could have a happy life. How in the world do you have a happy life or marriage when there's that dynamic going on, right? So we were very prominent, and we had beautiful houses and lovely, smart friends, and I had a daughter, we had a daughter, and we played roles. And it looked like from the outside, everything was perfect. And in the inside, I was so lonely and so sad. And I'd committed myself to this marriage. I was going to make it work. And
all the secrets again, isn't it?
All the secrets.
Which was your familiar environment?
Yes.
So we generally tend to default to what's familiar to us.
Exactly.
That be your understanding of it? Yeah.
Exactly. Almost without an awareness of the similarities and the patterns, you know.
Yeah, it's driven by the subconscious.
Yeah.
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 It's your husband is resembling similar behaviors as your father did, where your father would leave and possibly had relationships outside of the marriage. And then we'll come back, just as your husband was having relationships outside of your marriage.
Right.
And then you're standing there in this situation where consciously it's horrible and you feel lonely, but subconsciously,
It
this
was
is where I feel
working.
safe because this is what I know. This is the place that I feel comfortable in. This is all I know.
Mm-hmm.
Until we have the courage to start questioning it and begin to let that part of ourselves go or forgive ourselves for that part of ourselves.
It's very hard, I think, Gavin, to fully forgive ourselves. I think almost everyone in a marriage that has experienced trauma would recognize this pattern. Maybe it wasn't quite so blatant or quite so painful, but this is what we do in long-term relationships. Things that we haven't overcome, that we've hidden, we tend to hide from our partners. And the very sad thing is that we perceive that it is our partner who is distancing themselves from us and who doesn't want us and whatever. And we begin to think, this is my pattern and they don't want me, so I'll just do what I've learned. Hide, be more successful.
Protect yourself with those external
Yes.
outlets. Yeah.
And be dramatically lonely.
How did that show up in your marriage, this loneliness? Like what did that look like for you?
Well, I just took on so many of these external roles that I thought were important. Oh my God, I went to several years of seminary. I was working, I'd gotten a PhD. I was teaching at this prominent medical school. And that was enough, right? That was enough.
Mm-hmm.
But I still didn't have someone who wanted me, who loved me, who we were involved in this dance that nobody really knew about. And how I gave myself to that, and how he gave himself to that, and how so many other people do that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can definitely relate to the shame and to hiding parts of yourself in a relationship. And as you know, I had a pretty serious porn addiction.
Mm-hmm.
But that's also coming from a place of shame because, and it's something I speak to a lot of men about and would be interested to hear your opinion on it, especially when it comes to intimacy in the relationship, such as he felt such a level of shame
Mm-hmm.
by his mother's response to him acting out in this way.
Mm-hmm.
And being raised in this very Catholic country where sex is almost frowned upon or it's just simply functional. And that fantasies or kinks or that, things that are quite pleasurable are associated with a lot of guilt and shame. So in the relationship and in these intimate scenarios, you may be having sex and being quite intimate with your partner,
Mm-hmm.
but then you're holding back parts of yourself. So you may be only giving her or him 20% of
Mm-hmm.
yourself. And you're holding back these parts where ultimately, for me, my understanding is that when you're in that situation, you're giving your all. It's like expression of love. And then that other 80% of yourself that you feel so shameful about, that you keep secret because you feel shame about it, you can transfer that over to porn,
Mm-hmm.
where it's safe to do so.
Mm-hmm.
I've got this fantasy, I've got this kink, but if I express it here, it may result in a rejection or some sort of response from her that would make me feel ashamed about myself, which is, again, coming from somewhere in your own past. And there's an incredible disconnection there in the relationship. And then the more you sort of delve into these other avenues, the more pleasurable that becomes, and the more of an escapism that becomes, especially when difficulties do eventually arise in a relationship because you're not having all your needs met. And I've identified that pattern in my own life, and I can also perhaps help other men see this within themselves too, that you're actually not giving your all, and this part that you're not giving, you're transferring that energy over here to somewhere where you feel safe to do so. It could be porn, but also could be prostitution, or maybe even an affair that's just all very physical, where there's low risk of rejection and therefore low risk of shame. What's your thoughts on that?
Well, I'm so glad you brought that up, and thank you for being so honest about your past. But this is a huge, huge issue. Because when you're engaging in porn, there's this thought, this rationale that this isn't hurting anybody. Look, I'm taking care of everything. I'm going to work. I'm taking care of the kids, whatever. But this is just something I'm doing to take away these needs.
Yeah, to take the edge off, to have some fun.
Right.
Yeah, to enjoy pleasure.
And I don't feel guilty about that, right? That's what you say to yourself. This isn't hurting anyone, until you realize it is a huge source of shame. And anytime you split yourself up, which we're all doing, and take things away because we're afraid of being vulnerable with our partners, afraid of being honest with our partners.
Honest with ourselves, yeah.
Honest with ourselves, taking care of these needs elsewhere. It's creating vast, vast caverns of distance, whatever. How can you ever start back with that initial innocence and love and passion that you had when you came together, when part of you has been satisfying yourself in other ways? And it's a real problem for, I would say, a huge portion of the population. There's so many, let's talk about people who aren't in relationships. I'm sure it's the same here as it is in the States. I don't know what the statistics are, but a vast percentage of men and women in the United States have not had a partnered sexual relationship in a year or several years. Well, people have needs. How does this work? How can we have a society where maybe 25 to 35% of these people are not allowed, they are not held and touched, and their needs aren't satisfied? Well, they just start putting layers of protection around themselves, and they think that they're doing the right thing in some twisted way by dealing with their desires through porn or prostitution or things like that. And it's getting to be a bigger and bigger and bigger issue because people are friggin' lonely. They're lonely. And so artificial intelligence, within several years, artificial intelligence will be so accessible and so effective that it's going to be a resource for anybody who doesn't want to be vulnerable, who feels like nobody could love them. And, and then when that begins to happen, there is enormous disconnect between the sexes or partners. And men begin to feel that women don't want them, that women are too needy, maybe, or want too much, or, you can't be the perfect guy. I mean, how can you be the perfect guy, really? They want somebody who talks to them like the main character in a romance novel, makes love to them all the time, except for they don't have enough energy to make love, and they don't feel great about themselves. I mean, that may be what's going on there. And really what people want is to be wanted. Men aren't necessarily looking for the most perfect body and the most perfect woman, right? They
True.
want to be wanted. They don't want to have to tuck parts of themselves away, hide it, make up for it with these online events.
Secrets.
More secrets.
Mm.
And when you want to let your partner know, let's say, I need to let her know, or I need to let him know that this is going on. But when do you stop in the middle of a busy marriage, raising kids, and saying, I feel so vulnerable and I hate myself so much at a certain level that the only way I can be sexually satisfied is through porn or with somebody who doesn't know me, right? I mean, I think that's what I hear going on a lot.
Yeah, that makes sense. What incredible courage it would take to have that conversation with
who
somebody.
has it. Yeah. Mainly they get caught.
Yeah.
And then there's a horrible feeling on the partner's side that they've been betrayed.
Which then the man feels horrible about, because he takes responsibility for hurting this woman through his behaviors and actions, which were not completely intentional. That was driven from a place of pain, shame, that he was possibly and probably unaware of as well. Most of these men, such as I wasn't aware that this was driven from a place of shame. I wasn't stopping and asking myself these questions in terms of, why am I in this webcam chat room every single night? What's drawing me in here all the time? I never stopped because the pleasure was just so intense. And it was ultimately something that took me away from the cold, hard reality of my existence and the life real life. So until you get caught.
Till you get caught.
And then it's more shame.
And there's
depending
anger,
on how your partner
right?
reacts. Yeah.
There's anger on part of the partner and you feel guilty and how I'm going to make it up. And then how do you go back and have that conversation and say
yeah. How could you do this to me?
How could you do this to me?
I did this. I'm a bad person.
You're a terrible person. I'm a terrible person, right? Right.
And you go deeper and deeper into the shame.
And it can wind up, what's the easiest way to deal with this? Well, we'll just cut this off, and she'll say he was addicted to porn, and he'll say she wasn't there. She didn't love me enough. She didn't want me. And there we have it. And yet that wasn't what happened necessarily at all.
On the surface, that was it. But
that was it. That's the short story. That's the cliff notes to what happened in that marriage.
But the secrets still exist.
Yes.
With the shame.
And then we can end that difficult conversation, that difficult relationship. We can get past the shame or bury it deeper by finding another partner. And wow, this is really a much better fit. But that same human being, whether it be female or male, is going into another relationship where they're hiding, again, parts of themselves. And being desired is such a drug. Everybody wants that.
Yeah. What's been your experience?
Yes. Yes. What is love? I mean, why is it so exciting? And why do you feel so good about yourself when someone falls in love with you?
You're receiving something you've never had before. They're mirroring back the love that you have within, helping you remember who you are until you eventually forget as you begin to hide. Yeah. Because you start to compromise parts of yourself as well in order to keep this person in your life, in order to keep this good feeling going. And through the compromisations, this is where, of course, things start to break down.
Yes.
Mm.
Yes.
Resentment starts to build, anger.
And who's going to help you deal with this? Who's talking to men and women? My experience, by the time people get to my office, couples, one person's already left the marriage and they're coming in just to satisfy some kind of check some box before they get divorced or whatever, right?
Just to show that they've tried on some level, just to satisfy any type of guilt they may feel from leaving the relationship. Is that it? Whereas deep down they've already made the decision.
Well, they don't really want to reveal themselves. They don't want to open up about what's going to happen in the next relationship, because the same thing will happen to a certain extent.
Mm-hmm. Wherever you go, you take yourself with you.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're hiding parts of yourself and you have walls up, protective walls, then that's a great asset. You'll go into the next relationship playing a part that looks, hey, that looks great. Oh, I feel so strong. I feel differently about this person. But most of the time, the patterns will repeat themselves. And so we really have to be vulnerable and open and really look at ourselves. We can't be in a marriage or a partnership or a life and always be pointing the finger at the partner, right? Mm-hmm. And that's what we do. And if I had $1 for every woman who comes in and say, well, I watched a podcast and I have realized that my husband or my partner is a narcissist. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like, oh, really? Yeah. Everybody's saying that about their partner. What about you?
Mm.
And why did you fall for someone who is a narcissist? And what makes him or her a narcissist? And before narcissism, people were coming in saying she's borderline or he's borderline, because that was the state of the times at that point.
Yeah. No, it's narcissism. This is the new trend now, is it?
Yeah. Well, how often do you hear that?
Yeah, a lot. Yeah,
a lot with the men you work with?
With the men, yeah. I mean, it's so easy to point the finger and blame their partners, blame the woman. She's not showing up. She's not being sexually active. She's not doing this. She's not doing that. Well, what do you do? I had a conversation with somebody today who's having difficulties in being intimate in his relationship and telling me that his sex drive has diminished. And then he tells me about the situation at home, and his wife is, being a mother and being the caregiver, being the, taking care of the family, and that he's unable to access this other side of her, then being the wife, being the intimate partner. And he travels for work, and then when he travels, all of a sudden he's tempted to do other things. And I'm asking, well, is this your sex drive, or is this you, or is this us? Is it that you're actually not transferring this energy or pouring your energy into the relationship? You're taking it away again and pouring it somewhere else, because you're getting an immediate fix over here, potentially immediate fix over here. Whereas over here, it's probably not going to be an immediate fix. It's probably going to take a bit of work, a bit of hardship, a lot of difficult communication in terms of expressing your needs, your wants, putting yourself in a vulnerable situation where you are unhappy about certain aspects of your relationship, that your intimate needs are not being met. It's like, well, that's daunting.
It really is. And you have to deal with things like laundry and the mortgage and kids and...
Which he's doing all... Again, this guy is the breadwinner. He is the protector, the provider.
Well, he's doing a great job. So
he's doing a great, yeah.
What's this, and I'm dealing with this over on the side.
Yeah.
porn is over on the side. Other relationships are over on the side.
Mm-hmm.
It's not affecting my family.
Mm-hmm.
I'm still giving them everything I have. And yet we're compromising ourselves when we do that kind of thing.
Yeah.
We never know. We never really know how much damage we're doing to ourselves that just will grow and grow and grow.
Mm-hmm. I'm giving them everything I have. What exactly is that? External materials?
Well,
home?
I'm working hard. I'm paying the mortgage. I take the kids out to the zoo on the weekends,
but it's almost like a have-to list. I have to do this, and it's all very logical and all very surface level again.
Yeah.
But are you giving them your love, your full presence? Because if there's difficulties beneath the surface, those difficulties will arise and present themselves in various ways in your relationship or with your family, where you actually show up with anger or resentment, or I'm doing all this, and you're heading towards burnout because you're running on empty, and then your needs aren't being met in the relationship, and then all of a sudden somebody else may step into your life and
the partner knows it.
Yeah.
Don't you think the partner generally knows it, even if they don't know it?
Mm-hmm.
They know that their husband or their wife is not looking at them.
But then again, somebody has to be courageous enough to step up and start talking about it.
Yes.
Because she's probably feeling the same pain or difficulty, but perhaps quite reluctant to communicate it. Whereas for men that I work with, it's really about helping them realize the courage they have and then transfer this courage into the areas of your life where you feel challenged. And on the other side of that challenge, you're going to find confidence and more strength and purpose. But it comes from courage first.
Yes. And vulnerability. And, I think that it's always too late. We always feel it's too late. I've done this. Now I have to clean the slate and start over again. And then there's this division between the sexes. Men are, come on, Gavin, they're all narcissists. And women, they're all narcissists or not taking, they expect too much of us. We can't do this and that and that.
Mm-hmm. Now you want me to perform in the bedroom? Now you want me to...
Yeah.
10x my sex life with you? What? I'm exhausted and be looking after the kids all day. What the fuck? Yeah.
Well, that's not funny at all, but I'm laughing because it's so typical.
But
it's so universal.
But is it the man then to step in and create an opportunity where the woman can actually feel more relaxed and be in her feminine, not in her masculine, which the masculine is all do.
Uh-huh.
And let her be. And something I'm often trying to teach the men is when your woman is having, and I had it myself quite recently, when your woman is having this potentially emotional meltdown, don't run away. When she's being critical of you, she's really asking for help. When she's expressing her anger, she's actually quite scared. But this can often provoke the underlying trauma that the man has, where he was met with this angry mother. And an angry mother means a mother that doesn't love me anymore. And I'm so scared. I feel so alone. I feel so vulnerable. And you hide away, you run away to your bedroom and you avoid this because it's so painful. But of course, this is part of the healing. It's your woman who's expressing her anger is like the little girl who's afraid and just needs to feel safe.
Yes.
And this is where you actually approach her, go forward instead of running back. And as you do that, she'll trust you all the more. She'll feel more protected. She'll feel safer. And she'll open up a lot more in every way. You know what I mean? In every way.
In every way.
In every way possible.
Yes.
And I have had men who've been with me, and they've reclaimed the love and intimacy in their relationships just by doing that one thing. I had a guy reach out to me a couple of years ago, and he was on the brink of separation. My wife is going through postnatal depression, and every single day, it's anger, and and I'm asking, well, what do you do when she's angry? I do nothing. I just, she's in there, she's smashing plates, and she's, kicking and screaming. I'm going, she's asking for help. She's fucking terrified. And he was being provoked because it resembled the terrifying mother that he had in his childhood.
Yes.
So once I helped him to understand that, and he got to the point where he was telling me, he'd be on the couch and all of a sudden he'd hear her kicking up. And he'd be like, yes, whoa, this is my opportunity. And he got excited about it versus afraid about it. And what that did was everything outside of the home changed as well. He started to stand up to his bosses. He started to take risks in terms of building his own business. And he's gone on and on from strength to strength.
Wonderful.
By stepping up and standing up in his marriage and realizing the strength that he has to be able to hold this woman when she's melting down potentially. So, yeah.
That would have never happened. He would have continued pointing the finger if there hadn't been that intervention and that opening up on his part, because what man wants to be judged and criticized and asked to do one more thing?
Well, we do a good job of doing that to ourselves.
Yes.
We beat ourselves up all the time.
Yes. Men and women.
Yeah.
All the time.
They just need someone like me, perhaps, or you, to step in and put an arm around their shoulder and say, it's okay. It's okay.
And the sooner the better. The sooner the better. So a lot of this happens during the times that our children are born, don't you think?
Dynamics start to shift.
And we feel like, oh, we've been replaced here by this child. And the woman
You're referring
feels,
to the man? Yeah. The child is getting all the love and the nurturing now and sort of pushed it aside.
And here's the wife trying to get her body back and taking care of one other person and
exhausted.
Yes, exhausted. And so she feels unattractive, unlovable, and she sees her husband acting that out. So,
but then there's a reciprocation of love that comes from the child as well, isn't it? Because when you give that attention and love to the child, it's almost immediately given back to you. So this becomes a natural replacement for the work that's required to cultivate that love in your marriage again or in your relationship again with the man, because it's harder work. It takes a bit of time. You've got to navigate through like the shitstorm of the shame or the secrets or the vulnerability or the pain that you're carrying. So I think we're always reluctant to take the path that's least the path of more resistance.
Projecting onto our partners rather than taking the risks of looking at ourselves. That's kind of the foundation of it all.
Was that the turning point for you when it came to your marriage?
Well, I don't know what I was thinking. Oh my God, here I am, a healthy woman who wants to be loved, wants to have sex. And then I have this husband who's like, nope. And so I just buried all of these things until an affair I would catch him, or he would tell me, gosh, I've been having an affair for a year, I'm like, where was I? I just knew that he was busy and tired, and he would say, she's frigid, that I was frigid because I didn't want to bother him. I didn't want to be vulnerable.
You wanted to protect him in a way?
Well, I wanted to protect myself.
Yeah.
And he never knew, really, how much I needed these things and wanted these things. And
if you're always protected, you can never be connected.
Right. And then it's quite redeeming and validating when you've done the quote right thing and your partner's having an affair or addicted to porn or whatever. It's kind of like, phew, that's not me, right? But where did it go awry, and why weren't we there to open up to each other before we created these separate lives? No.
What did your life look like after you let this person go?
Well, it was grand, really. But I hadn't healed all the issues from my marriage and my past and so forth. So it was great not to be governed by a marriage and to be free to make my own decisions. And yet I wasn't really open to relationships for a long time because I didn't want to be hurt like that ever again.
When did you leave the marriage? Or were you?
I left the marriage. Essentially, I left the marriage when my father was dying. He died. We went to his funeral. We came back home. And that very night, my husband said, "I'm leaving you." And I thought, if my husband could do that to me when the person I loved most in the world had just died, he never loved me at all. And he had been waiting just until my father died so that he could leave without leaving in the midst of all that.
Okay. Or without having to reap the repercussions of a backlash from your father, potentially, yeah?
Or not from my father, but from me, because this is the only time I really needed this dude. You know, and because I had become so independent and so invulnerable. So then it took me a long time to be able to say, this is what I need and I want. And so it's quite different now. Yeah. I haven't remarried, but I've enjoyed relationships with men. Part of me isn't healed, or else, there would probably be another marriage or another long-term relationship.
Yeah. How's that healing process?
It takes a lifetime to really do all of this, doesn't it? I mean, we can work through layers of it, but it's still there with us. That subconscious is still speaking to us and saying those things. It isn't safe. It isn't safe to trust a man. And I'm not truly lovable.
Forgiveness is the key, or is it something else?
Well, forgiveness is essential. Forgiveness for him, forgiveness for myself, but also loving myself, You have to love yourself again to feel that someone else can love you, I think.
Which is done by being with yourself.
Not always saying it's out there. It's out there. It's within me.
Has this been the turning point for you in the last couple of weeks, or
no?
It's been something else?
This has been a work in progress.
Along with something else, and then something else, and something else.
Yes. And so, what's going on between men and women now, we're talking about partnered marriages and partnered relationships right now. But if you get away and you talk about how men and women are coming together and why they aren't together and why there's porn and why there are affairs and
they're together,
polyamory and everything that's going on now, is because people feel that it's safer. It's safer.
Well, we've been given a safe avenue, whereas before there wasn't this path to venture down, ever since the rise of the internet. I'm sure there's been plenty of marriages pre-internet that went through a lot of struggle, but they hung in there.
How many of your of your clients are actually talking to their wives or their partners about how compelling and attractive porn is? How many of them? Not many.
Not many. No.
If we just say the word porn, that means wrong,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
That means I'm bad. Somebody's going to get angry at me and whatever. Do you think porn has a helpful place in society these days?
And you were going to ask me this question.
You did?
Because you asked me something similar a few weeks ago. It depends on the intention behind it. So, again, for me, if it begins to replace the relationship, that's where it's a problem.
Mm-hmm.
If it's potentially used to complement the relationship, then okay, maybe there's something in this.
Mm-hmm.
Because there's couples that I know that watch porn together.
Mm-hmm.
And who are we to judge?
Women who haven't been in a relationship for years use that as a vehicle for expression, and men the same thing. And what I'm wondering is, why aren't women and men coming together? You know, why?
But then if you're watching porn as a way to express yourself when you are out of a relationship, it sort of satiates that desire or want to pursue a relationship or to open yourself up. I don't think you should pursue anything, but that's something else. To open yourself up to the potential of a relationship. Because what do I need a relationship for? I can
do this,
I can satisfy myself here. And what again, it's going back to that thing you mentioned. Well, why would I need a man?
Mm-hmm.
A man, why would I need a woman? Why do I need to be in a relationship?
Mm-hmm. So much trouble.
And again, with the rise of AI, you will have...
This is going to be a big deal.
Thing, I'm not going to call it a woman or a man, but you have a thing there that seems so real and so perfect that why would I bother going through the trials and tribulations of a relationship? It's like, well, you go through the trials and tribulations so you can improve yourself, grow, progress, become more loving, compassionate. You have a perfect partner. Like, what is there to gain from perfection? What is it to work on? What is there to improve on? And as you've been saying, the partner is, or whatever the partner is going through, is a reflection of you, reflecting something back to you for you to work on. For example, whenever she's having an emotional meltdown and you run away, you stop and ask, oh, why am I running away from this? What's that about? It's like, okay, this is something for me to lean into in order to expand myself, in order to be more loving, be more compassionate, be stronger, more resilient. But if you have an AI robot that never has a meltdown, you're stuck.
It's going to be a huge, huge issue, growing issue for society.
Yeah, it already is.
Right.
But it's rising, yeah. And porn and the sex industry is such a it's powerful, because again it taps into our greatest fears, like being vulnerable, being open, being honest,
rejected.
being rejected.
Oh my God. So how do you layer addictions into this framework? Because we see a lot of people with various kinds of addictions.
Well, the addiction is stemmed from the underlying pain. It's not the addiction, not the porn that's a problem. It's the underlying pain or insecurity that's driving the porn. So once we can get in touch with the shame and the pain, we can begin to understand why the addiction. So it's not, the big thing for a lot of us is, and for me, as I'm talking to these men and having these communications with them, is like, I'm not here to judge. I'm not going to judge you. You're watching porn, you're snorting cocaine, you're having affairs. Okay, that's where you're at, but you're exactly where you need to be. And there's something in this to explore. So have the courage to explore it versus the resistance because you feel shameful about it, or You judge yourself over it. As I said, we criticize ourselves all the time. And when we're criticizing ourselves, we're beating ourselves up even more. And because we're beaten, we feel pain. It's, well, I need pleasure. I need to fix. And I need a fix for this, which is something like porn. Pleasure to numb the pain. But as you ignore the pain increases, it intensifies.
And it takes such enormous trust, doesn't it, for a man to come to you and say, this is really what's going on behind the scenes. And I hate myself for it, but I can't stop.
Yeah, but that's why I tell them about my story on social media. I've got many, many videos and podcasts I've been on where I've sat there or stood there and say, hey, I was addicted to porn. I was in a webcam chat room. The videos were shared around my home place. People seen me in my most vulnerable state, judged me, and did whatever else. And I was left with a choice. Okay, am I going to let this shame and pain dictate my life, or can I use this experience in order to help other men through their pain and shame? Because I know for a fact that I'm not the only one in this web. I know for a fact, because I was in the webcam chat room, I know for a fact I'm not the only person in a webcam chat room. I'm not the only person watching porn. So again, and this is my purpose, is to break down that barrier from men. The wall that we use to protect ourselves. And to take a sledgehammer and say, hey, I see you. I see you. I feel you. I've got you. And that's something that's all men need, is to know they've got somebody that has their back.
That somebody else understands their needs and their shame. And, right, this is an enormous, enormous act of service that you're doing for men. And when did there come a time when you said, I'm going to face this. I'm not going to run away from it. I could kind of go to a different part of Ireland or move to England or maybe the States, and nobody would know. How did you have the courage to do that, Gavin? You didn't even move from your community, did you?
Stayed right where I am. Yeah. Because again, I took the pain and turned it into a purpose. And whatever you want to call it, a gut feeling, a higher purpose, a message from above, whatever. It's like these things come to you. And I knew that if I ran away, because I've wanted to run away many times, of course. I was in a car accident when I was 18. I was at the scene of the car accident. There was maybe 2 seconds, 3 seconds maybe, during that moment where I said, I just want to fucking run away from this. I want to run away from this scene. But I knew I couldn't. Something kept me there. Had to be there. Had to endure the pain and the shame and the trauma of that experience. And again, it's sort of coming to a point where you look back at these experiences like I believe you have or you are doing, and you have gratitude to look back and say, okay, this had to happen in order for me to have the capacity to open the door for other men or other people who are struggling and suffering, and say, hey, it's okay.
And that's been very healing for you.
It's been healing for me, but of course my journey continues. I'm not fixed. I'm not enlightened. I'm not.
You're not free from the shame and guilt and pain?
Freeing myself from the guilt and shame and pain, yeah. It's a process.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a lot further on than I have been, than I was last week, than I was 6 months ago, than I was 3 years ago, than I was 20, 30, 40 years ago. So it's a process. And I'm going to continue on this journey, because the more I free myself, the more I can then
and you
help
have
others.
Teenage kids?
Of my own.
Mm-hmm.
Ariana's 14, yeah. Mason's 7. So.
And has this become a discussion with Ariana?
Ariana knows, yeah. She can't not know, because I'm all over social media talking about my porn addiction. And she has come to me and she has had her discussions, and she's opened up about her own difficulties and struggles with trying to navigate this in her own life. Teenage
Mm-hmm.
years, as you know yourself, hormones are heightened and
Raging.
a lot of confusion and questions arise as your body is changing. But again, it's opening up that door where she knows I'm not going to judge her.
And you're not going to leave and run away and create the impression of a picture-perfect wife and family and in some other place where people don't know what's going on inside of you. I think that would have been, can you imagine if you had run away, the torment that you would be in?
Yeah. Where do we eventually run to? Off the edge of a cliff? Because the pain, it's like that thing of, if we keep running away from the storm's going to continue to follow us. But if we actually turn and run into the storm will eventually pass. So wherever you go, the pain's going to follow, the shame. But hey, have the courage to face it. It will pass.
It's a great discussion.
Mm-hmm. To ask you the same question about the addictions, have you a different interpretation of that?
Well, I see addictions as a lover that, like porn, alcohol, sex, cocaine, cannabis, there are all of these places where we can just numb the pain. And there's so many people numbing the pain. And there's so much loneliness. I'm sorry, but I don't think porn helps loneliness. What do men think about women? Or there aren't women out there who want them? Are women too judgmental? Or what's the deal? What do they say that keeps them away from looking for a lover or a wife? Or
almost like love is always out of reach, because that's how you felt as a child, that you always had to reach for your mother in order to love her, in order to receive her love, which means compromising parts of yourself to feel accepted by her.
Mm-hmm. We have so many men who feel like there's nobody out there for them. Like I have to swipe 200 times to get a coffee date, right? And women feel the same way. And so they disparage the partners or the men in general. And we have to watch when we're doing that we're disparaging an entire class of people, saying that they aren't able to fill our needs or to love us, right?
What's the first step?
First step is admitting to yourself that you are lonely, that you do want to be held, that you do want to be wanted, right? And just opening yourself up to meeting people and understanding. I love to go places and hear stories from other people, men, women, everybody. And that's what my life is like. I can go to places and understand people and watch and learn. And when you listen to other people's stories, there's a healing for yourself, I think.
Mm.
But I do know that there are so many frightened people, so many protected people, that we're getting into the dangerous zone as a society.
Danger zone is
saying that men, for women who are attracted to men are corrupt, men are not emotional, men are selfish, men are narcissistic. I would rather be protected than be vulnerable to a male. And the rebuttal from the male is, what does the male say to the female society? Something similar.
Mm-hmm.
She's going to expect too much. She can't really love me. And so we have porn, and we have a whole array of sexual tools that seem to be growing. And
as loneliness grows, yeah.
As loneliness grows. So I think loneliness, we have to accept that loneliness is at an epidemic proportions in society.
Mm-hmm. And loneliness is not cured by human connection.
Not necessarily, but protecting ourselves from human connection doesn't protect us from loneliness either. Mm-hmm. That's the flip side.
It's more about connecting to yourself, which means being honest with
Mm-hmm.
yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Because once you can identify your needs, your wants, your shame, your secrets, then you can begin to present those, or again process those through your healing, which reconnects you with yourself, to the truth of who
Mm-hmm.
you are. Love this conversation, Gloria. Thank you so much. I could go on and on here.
I know.
Yes.
I know.
And
it's just great. There's so many facets of this that we haven't even really.
So many facets, but I think we presented what we needed to present, or you presented, or
we presented. Yes, thank you. I really appreciate hearing your viewpoint, and I know a lot of men and women will appreciate hearing that.
Yeah, likewise. So, is there anywhere that people can reach out to you or work
Sure.
with you in some way? Can you let us know where that could be? Or
well, my email, how about that?
Yeah.
Is Dr Gloria Waterhouse at gmail.com. Dr Gloria Waterhouse at gmail.com. Love to hear from you.
Brilliant. You don't have a website or anything?
Mm-mm.
Don't need one. They will come to me. Thank you so much, Gloria. Absolutely.
Thank you, Gavin.
And I
treasure our relationship, and so very thankful that I got to meet you.
Yeah, likewise. Yeah.
Keep up this good work. Okay.
You too. And I'm sure there'll be a part 2 here somewhere.
I hope
at some point. Yeah, on your return.
Take care.
Thank you.